Well, good morning and welcome. It's a great pleasure to be here again and to have a second day with you, to have time to give you more of the pieces of classroom management. It's kind of a puzzle, and when you get enough of the pieces, it starts to really come together and be more than just the pieces. Yesterday we were talking about discipline management, and in the morning, the first part, we talked about prevention. And prevention does not look like we usually think of discipline management. We're not dealing with discipline problems. We're dealing with things like room arrangement, working the crowd, brief interactions, lesson plans that are one step at a time, a picture for every step. And that allows you to move and to prevent a lot of discipline problems. Then we looked at remediation, the part of meaning business in which calm is strength, upset is weakness. We learn to relax, and particularly when a child is giving us back talk, keep our mouths shut, keep calm, and let the student do all the work. Now, behavior management is conceptually simple. There are only two things you can do with behavior. You can increase it and you can decrease it. So the two basic technologies of management is increasing the behavior you want, decreasing the behavior you don't want. And if you can do that, then eventually you'll have what you want. Yesterday when we looked at meaning business, we were looking at decreasing the behavior you don't want. Today we have an hour together to look at increasing the behavior you do want. So we're going to be talking about responsibility. And in particular, responsibility training. How do you train the class to be responsible? And you will need this thousands of times a day. Let's say that you have 30 students in your class, and you want them all to show up on time, bring books and bring pencils and bring paper, and walk as they enter the classroom, be in their seats when the bell rings, ready to begin. You have just made 7 requests for cooperation. Times 5 class periods, times the rest of the day, times all the minutes in between, you will make tens of thousands of requests during the day for cooperation. Now here's what makes cooperation difficult to manage. It's voluntary. If you try to force someone to do something, that's coercion. That is the opposite of cooperation. Cooperation is a gift. We speak of giving cooperation, and that is a very appropriate figure of speech. We give cooperation. Now, have you ever heard of the saying, virtue is its own reward? Have you ever heard that saying? Well, I simply want to impress upon you that it does not apply to classroom management. In classroom management, goofing off is its own reward. Fooling around is always the easy, pleasurable alternative to being where you're supposed to be, ready to work. So not too surprisingly, kids can make an art form out of non-cooperation. For example, take pencils, simple lead pencil. You ever have kids in class who need to sharpen their pencil during class? And so, well, let's imagine the student who's always in trouble. Remember Larry yesterday, the one that sat right over there when I was in 5th grade? Well, let's imagine Larry on the first day of school. And Larry is sitting in class, and let's say it's high school. And Larry is thinking to himself, I'm not going to make it. I can't do this. I have to sit still for the next 189 days, 5 hours and 40 minutes. 6 hours a day like this. I can't do it. I need to move. I need to move. Now, how can I get up and stretch my legs in the middle of class without the teacher calling me down for being out of my seat? And suddenly, Larry has an epiphany. And he breaks his pencil lead, holds it up, and says, "May I please sharpen my pencil?" Now, the teacher might say, "Use one of your other pencils." Larry says, "I don't have another pencil." And then the teacher says, "Well, then hurry." Have you ever been through this? Does Larry hurry? No. This kid could be a track star. He could run the 100-yard dash in 10 seconds flat. And this is how fast he goes to the pencil sharpener. Rubbernecking the whole way, pulling his buddies off task. And then when I finally get to sharpen my pencil, this is how fast I do it. Have you ever looked at the work kids do and wonder what the future holds for our country? Well, rest assured tonight, sleep like a baby, because when you watch Larry sharpen a pencil, you realize he's really a craftsman. And when it passes rigid quality control standards, having been done perfectly, Larry hustles back to his seat about this fast, probably talking to one of his friends on the way, so you have to say, "Would you please get back to your seat?" And Larry, of course, acts innocent, gets back to the seat, and then watch Larry start to work. He has to kill a little more time, you know. He has to avoid the task until finally, 4 or 5 minutes later, he returns to task. Now, here's a question for Larry. Why should I bring 3 sharpened pencils to class every day, like you asked me to, if it means that for the rest of my academic career, I will never have an excuse to get out of my seat in class? Now, that is an important question, because the question that underlies responsible behavior is simply this: why? Why should I? And that is the question you will have to answer thousands and thousands of times a day for the kids in your class, or you will get no more cooperation than divine inspiration feels like motivating them to do on any given day. So if you want to increase the level of cooperation so that you get what you want consistently, you're going to have a management program where you train the kids to be cooperative. Now, there's a general name for the answer to that question. It's called an incentive. An incentive. Now, an incentive is simply any answer to this question. So it's a very broad category. For example, much of cooperative behavior within a family is simply based on love and mutual consideration and affection. That's an incentive. So love, wanting to please my parents, wanting to please my wife, that's probably the most pervasive, powerful incentive in everyday life among the ones we love. But on the first day of school, you have everybody else's children. You haven't raised them. They don't know you. They don't love you yet. And so you're going to have an answer to that question that goes beyond the fact that I love you. They're going to look at you as a stranger and say, "Why should I?" And that makes your job in management more difficult than it might as a parent when you've raised your own few children from birth and you have all kinds of love established between you. So you're going to have to give a very concrete answer to the question, "Why should I?" Now, in your college courses, you probably learned something about incentives. You probably learned about reinforcers, consequences. You learn about things like that. So incentive systems are driven by reinforcers, by consequences. But that's really not that useful for the classroom. In learning experiments, you can starve the little mice and make them run for food. You can't do that in the classroom. It's not that simple. So let's take a look at an incentive system for real life, something that we might be able to take from everyday life and apply to the classroom, something a little bit more complex than just a reinforcer. So let's take something we're all going to have to do if we have children. Train a teenager to be responsible with money. Now, teenagers need some money, for school lunch, for, a little money with their friends, just a little walking around money, as we might say. Now, if you don't teach your teenager to be responsible with money when they live under your roof, then the real world will have to teach them when they're $5,000 in credit card debt on their 30th birthday. So it's far better that you do it yourself when you're in control, because the school of hard knocks can be hard. It can be brutal. So how do you train a teenager to be responsible with money? Well, let's just start there. First, what is the first thing a teenager must have before they can ever learn to be responsible with money? What's the first thing they must have? Money, of course. It's a program of money management. You can't learn to manage money until you have some money to manage. So you have to make sure the kid has money. Now, how do they get the money? That's the least critical part of the entire program. They can work a job after school, or you can give it to them as an allowance. So how many of you had an allowance? Your parents give you some money to go, take to school, buy lunch with. You're responsible for this, responsible for that. Okay, both of them work perfectly. You can sell something or work in some shop after school, or your parents can give you money. Now, my parents gave me an allowance. They gave me the money. And it started, kind of seriously, in high school. And I got the high school is your job speech. And it sounded like this. High school is your job. You will not have time to go out and work in a store or make money. You're going to be out for sports, and you're going to have to write papers, and you're going to have to read assignments, and that's a full-time job. So in order for you to just have the money you need and here's what they pay for. School lunches, a little money for, hamburgers with your buddies after the basketball game, and tux rental for the dance. We had these formal dances every once in a while, so you had to rent a tux. And so they gave me some money for that. Now, when I learned to drive a car, where I grew up, age 16, then they doubled the allowance. And now it's school lunches, a little walking around money, tux rental for the formal, gas money, date money. So a little money for driving the car, taking the girl out. It worked fine. So when my son was that age, I decided to do the same thing. It worked fine for my parents, and it worked pretty well for him. But if you think that any incentive system is perfect, think again, because the human race is never that easy to deal with. So my son was going with his present wife very soon after he learned to drive. And one Thursday he came to me and he said, "Dad, I wonder if I could talk to you for a second." Now, if anybody here has a 17-year-old and they come to you and say, "Dad, I'd like to talk to you," you know you have some kind of problem. They usually don't want to talk to you at all. So I said, "Well, what is it, son?" He said, "Well, I was wondering if I can just borrow $5 until Sunday." Sunday was, payday. "And I'll pay it back." Don't you love the way kids think? This is a secured loan. He'll pay me back because it's all my money. So I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, let me tell you how it works. I give you money. Every Sunday, I give you money for the week. But I do not lend money. Ever." Well, he was kind of shocked because I'm kind of, easy guy to get along with, He said, "But Dad, you don't understand. Don't you love it, 17? It's such a good offer. You must be stupid to turn it down. You don't understand." I said, "What don't I understand?" "Well, it's just till Sunday." Now I'm starting to enjoy myself. So I say, "I know, son. I'm familiar with the calendar. No, well, now he's got to work harder. Dad, you see, I talked to Tracy at school, and he's going to have a party at his house after the basketball game. So my son's on the basketball team, Tracy's on the basketball team. We're going to have a party at Tracy's house, and he needs some help with chips and dips, and some Cokes and stuff. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. He thinks this is such a wonderful, beneficent thing that I should go for it. So what do you think? I said, let me repeat myself. I give you money, but I do not lend money. He said, well, what am I supposed to do? See, so now I'm supposed to prescribe the answer to the dilemma he's created for himself. What am I supposed to do? I relaxed, yesterday, relaxed, looked at him in the eye and said, I don't have any idea. Oh man, I can't talk to you. See, now I'm a clinical psychologist with a communication problem. This is just getting better and better and better. I said, oh no, honey, you can talk to me about anything on earth. For example, today, you talked to me about a loan. And you learned that the answer today, tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now is no. Oh man. So we had a very, very disappointed teenager, and they didn't have the party, and I thought to myself, tough. Now let me tell you something about teenagers and money. We'll get to the classroom quickly enough. There's only one way for kids to learn to be responsible with money, and that's to have a budget. A fixed amount that they have to cover certain obligations with, and to learn to live within it day after day, week after week. Now, has anybody here ever had a fantasy maybe of winning the lottery or inheriting $1 million? Yeah, that ever just crossed your mind? Because we all want more than we can afford. You go shopping and there are those shoes and there's that dress and there's that, the world is just full of things we'd love to have. And of course, all the advertising on the billboards and the television, it's just saying to us, you should want this, you should have this, you deserve this. And so we all have a tendency to want more. And there's only one way for a teenager to learn to live within a budget. And that's to learn to say to themselves over and over, no, forget about it, and walk away. Now, you might still be thinking about that thing you want, but if you practice it often enough, you can get good at saying, forget about it, walk away, and not have it worry you. So, there's only one way to learn to live within a budget, and that's practice, practice, practice. Now, let's apply that to the classroom. What commodity in the great commodity exchange of life do kids waste all day, every day in the classroom as though it had no value whatsoever? What do kids throw away? Time. They are PhD time wasters. They just fritter it, spend it, like they had $1 million and were drunk. They just throw it away. Now, what we're going to have to do is train the kids to be responsible with time. Because until they learn to be responsible with time, they will waste a lot of the time that we give them every day and call education. We may have them at school for 6 hours, but they could easily waste an hour of that during the day. So let's start looking at nuts and bolts of time management. And yesterday, we looked at the specifics, and we're going to do the same thing today. Look at the nuts and bolts of what makes it work. So we're going to look at responsibility training, and let's start with the teacher's role. The teacher's role is first and foremost a giver. And you will give. And if you err, you will err in the direction of giving. Because if you give a little extra, you won't ruin the program. But if you don't give enough, you'll starve the program. Giving. Now, What are we going to give? Well, we're trying to teach them to be responsible with time. So everything is going to be based on time. We're going to give them time. So our first gift is time, but not any old time. This is an incentive program. Let me give you a simple definition of an incentive. Anything that anybody will work for. If it doesn't generate work, it's not an incentive. I could lay a bar of gold on the table, and if you're not interested in it and won't do anything for it, it doesn't function as an incentive. If you work for it, then it's an incentive. So it has to produce work. That is to say, it has to be time that the kids desire, that they value, that they want enough to work for. It has to be preferred. So we have preferred time. Now, what kinds of things do you do during time that might be a reinforcer? Well, the answer is activities. So forget your tangible reinforcers, you know, your little gifties that you give away, your candies or all that kind of stuff. Save it for your multiply handicapped preschoolers. This is the real world. We're going to use preferred activity time, or PAT. And we will learn that you can buy and sell any behavior you want to in the classroom with preferred activity time. The question is how? It's all in the mechanics. Preferred activity time. Now, I haven't defined it yet, except that you know that it's something the kids want. It's desirable. They're willing to work for it. I'll flesh out exactly what you do later. How much time? Well, enough time to do something worthwhile. How often do you have it? Well, often enough so that a kid can kind of relate to it. For example, with a first grader, you would need to have preferred activity time more frequently because they can't delay gratification all week the way a high school kid might. So for a first grader, you might have it, three or four times in the morning, 2 or 3 times in the afternoon. It just fits their developmental capacity to imagine time and delay gratification, and so it's doable. By the 3rd grade, most kids can operate successfully on once in the morning, once in the afternoon, because you see we're kind of fading it so it's not as frequent with the older kids. So they're more mature, they can wait longer, they can delay gratification better. So by 5th grade, very commonly, once at the end of the day. Now, if you're dealing with immature children, and some of you in special ed, may have a whole room full of very immature children, you have to adjust your program to their social emotional age, not their chronological age. So if they have 9-year-old bodies but they act like 7-year-olds, then you have to treat them like 7-year-olds. So give them the time frame that you might use for, let's say, a 2nd grade class. At high school, or a departmentalized setting, there are usually 2 ways to do it. First, maybe once a week. Second, every class period. You can have a PAT at the end of every class period and zero out the account every class period. You can use the last 10 minutes of the period to, for example, play a learning game in which you review what you taught them that period. So you can zero it out. So we have a preferred activity time scheduled. And I'm going to use a just 5th grade class at the end of the day. That's kind of easy to conceptualize. Now I have to tell you, preferred activity time is not going to buy you anything. It only sets the stage. What buys you behavior is your second gift, which is bonus preferred activity time. It is the bonus preferred activity time that buys behavior. Now let's set up an account over here for PAT. 2 columns. And I'm going to give the class an allowance, just as I gave my son an allowance of money in order to begin the money management program. I'm going to give the class an allowance of time in order to prime the pump and begin the time management program. And for a 5th grade class, 15, 20 minutes is very typical. So let's just put 20 minutes. That's kind of generous, but it's still okay. Now, what do the kids have to do to earn that time? The answer is nothing. It's a gift, just like an allowance is a gift. If they have to earn it, it's a job. If it's an allowance, it's a gift. It's a gift. Now let's look at the types of bonuses and see how they operate. The first bonus is a hurry-up bonus. And a hurry-up bonus has one simple objective: train the kids to hustle instead of dawdle. So I'm trying to replace dawdling behavior with hustling behavior, because if they hustle, well, let me put it this way. If kids don't hustle, a lesson transition, going from math to reading, can take 4 or 5 minutes because they're in no hurry. Kids know that as soon as the transition is over, you're going to put them back to work. So the kids do this. You know what this means in the television business? Stretch it out. This is what kids do to a break. So if you give them a break to hand in a paper, sharpen a pencil, get a drink, they walk about this fast. They're doing this. And I'm standing here at the pencil sharpener, I'm talking to my friend, and maybe I'm sharpening my pencil, or maybe I'm just talking to my friend and waiting to sharpen my pencil. Kids are very skillful when it comes to this. So they will do everything as slowly as possible in order to increase their little vacation and put off getting back to work. Now, for them to hustle, you have to answer the question, why should I? And if you can't answer the question, don't expect any hustle. On the other hand, programs like this have been around forever. My mom used a hurry-up bonus when I was a kid. She used it at bedtime. I'll call it the bedtime routine. So here's the bedtime routine. See if you recognize it. I'm 7 years old. My brother's 9 years old. We're in there playing, My mother comes in. It's 8:30 in the evening. My mother comes in and says, Fred, Tom, it's time for bed. So let's get in the bathroom, wash your face, brush your teeth, get your pajamas on, get in bed. Now, as soon as you're in bed, we'll have story time, but lights out at 9 o'clock. Does that sound like anything any of your parents ever did? So it's bedtime, it's 8:30. You have to wash your face, brush your teeth, get your pajamas on, get into bed. I'll read you stories until 9 o'clock, and then the lights go out. So that was the bedtime routine. I'm sure that there are many parents and many of you who have had something like that in order to get the kids to bed. Okay, let's ask some technical questions. What was the PAT? Story time. Now here's the more important question. Who was in control of the duration of story time? The parents or the child? Who was in control? The parents? The child. The faster we move, the quicker we have story time. We snuggle in on either side of mom. She reads us stories, and it's wonderful, and we want it, and we look forward to it. And so we hustle. In fact, my brother and I got so clever. We thought we were clever. We beat the system. We thought we beat the system. We would get our pajamas on, wash our face, brush our teeth at 8 o'clock. Now, my mother knew we were doing this. So she would come in and say, all right, kids, it's 8:30, time to get... Well, look at you. You already have your pajamas on. And we go, hee. Well, did you brush your teeth? She knew that. Did you wash your faces? Well, then we're ready for story time right now. Yay! So we were such clever little kids that we got ready for bed before it was time to get ready for bed so that we could have the whole half hour to snuggle in and get those stories. And we loved story time, and we would work hard in order to maximize it. Let me put it in different language. Empowerment. That's a term that has been used in education. We talk about empowering kids. Let me tell you something about empowerment. Nobody will take responsibility for anything that they do not control. If you don't control the outcome, then by definition, all of your efforts are to no avail. If you want people to be responsible, you have to give them power over their destiny and then make them responsible for the outcome, good, bad, or otherwise. Why do I give the kids preferred activity time? Because I have a soft head and think it'd be fun to play some games? That's a partial truth. It is fun to play games, but the reason I'm doing it is to empower them to control time so that I can teach them to be responsible with time, and instead of frittering it away, save it and use it for learning. Okay, let's take the hurry up bonus and apply it to the great sinkhole of lost learning time in the classroom, the lesson transition. All right, let's imagine we just have a simple transition where kids have a paper to hand in. So here we go. I'll model it for you, and then I'll go back over it and look at critical features. And I want you to imagine there's a clock up there on the wall that I'm pointing to, you know, the sweep second hand. So here we go. Class, before anybody gets out of your seat, let me tell you what I want. I want everybody to put your papers here on the corner of my desk. If you need to sharpen your pencil, now is the time to do it. If you need a drink of water, now is the time to get it. I want my cleanup committee to erase my boards and straighten up the books. I want everybody to pick up any paper you see laying around on the floor, get your desk back where they should be. Now, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to get that done. But you know from past experience, if you hustle, you can get it done in 30 seconds. Well, I'll give you 2 minutes. Let's see how fast you can get it done. And then all the time you save goes on to our PAT. Ready? All right, let's look at the clock. Let's begin. And then I immediately start working the crowd. Why? You learned it yesterday, because either you work the crowd or the crowd works you. For example, it's very easy for these 3 kids to be standing around the drinking fountain talking without anybody actually getting a drink right now. Why? Well, we're learning about incentive systems, and one of the things you have to know is that social behavior is self-reinforcing. You have an incentive system in which you're reinforcing each other with your friendship by just being social with each other. Now, that incentive system will beat my incentive system every day. Why? Because one of the most powerful factors that governs the force, the power of a reinforcer, is immediacy of delivery. You're enjoying it right now. That doesn't happen until the end of the day, so right now wins. If you want this to work, you have to get a monopoly. You have to eliminate the competition. And their little social incentive system is my competition. So I have to eliminate it. How do you do that? Well, here are 3 things you don't do. Nag, threaten, punish. That's coercive behavior. We're trying to generate cooperation. What do you do? A kind of a variation on management by walking around, better known as working the crowd. What you do is simply walk over and nice and casually get close to the kids and kind of look at them as though to say, "What's up?" And they get self-conscious and begin to smile. And then they say silly things like, "I'm just getting a drink." And you say, "Well, let's get the drink." "Okay, Mr. Jones." So I'm just kind of disrupting the disruption by working the crowd, which is what we talked about yesterday. And I come back here, and here are 2 kids standing not doing anything, and I kind of just walk over and look at them, you know. "Okay, Mr. Jones. Okay, let's get it done. Let's get it done." So I'm out here kind of, as the saying goes, herding cats. I'm trying to get the kids to be doing what, and if there's some fooling around, I can set limits on it. But basically, it's just by proximity and by patience and by being close instead of being at a distance that gets the job done. Now, here's something that can destroy work in the crowd. I'm walking here, and some kid says, "Mr. Jones, can I ask you a question?" You know, this could be a bright student, and they probably have a good question. And right now, that doesn't matter. This is what you say as soon as we're back in our seats, and then you just keep moving. And this kid says, Mr. Jones, can I ask you a question? As soon as we're back in our seats. Because if you start answering a question for some kid, that has a good question about the lesson you just taught, you're going to quit working the crowd, and you're going to look up and kids are standing around in twos and threes chit-chatting. So you have a job to do. Any teacher who thinks that a lesson transition is a break for them is clueless. They are a first year, maybe first week teacher. What you'll learn pretty quickly is that a lesson transition is one of the most concentrated examples of behavior management during an entire school day. It has the greatest possibility for wasted time. It requires the greatest amount of management in order to prevent the wasted time. And you have a job to do. Work in the crowd. Management by walking around. And when you have prompted and disrupted the disruption and everything looks pretty good, you head back for the front of the room. And you look around, and there's still 4 or 5 kids out of their seat, and you see some trash over there, and there's a kid standing not far from it. Here's what I say. Class, there's some trash over there on the floor. Now, can any of you imagine the kid who's standing nearby saying, "It's not mine"? Can you imagine that? Yeah, kids will be kids, right? Here's what I do. Class, there's a piece of trash over there on the floor. The kid says, "It's not mine," and I do this. That's body language. You know what that means? I don't care. You know why I did that? Because I don't care. It's not my PAT, it's your PAT. Now, not 5 feet from that kid who's standing there doing nothing, there are 4 or 5 kids that have already taken their seats. What do you think they say to the kid who's standing there? What do you think they say to him? Pick it up. Exactly. Hey, come on, man, just pick it up, pick it up. Now, what you just saw is that the kids have a vested interest in getting the transition finished so that we can get our preferred activity time, and they will help you manage the class with some very gentle peer pressure. And the peer pressure, I can't ever remember seeing it turn ugly. It's usually what I call urgent whispers. Hey, sit down, sit down, sit down. Hey, just pick it up, man. Now, kids will do things for their peer group they'll never do for you. And when everybody, 3 or 4 of my buddies are saying, "Hey, just pick it up." Okay, they pick it up, sit down. And now they're taking care of management. Now, I said this yesterday in passing, I'll say it again. If you're the only one in this class who cares about the class being well run, it will not be well run, because you'll have 30 kids just sitting on the fence looking at you saying, "It's your classroom, you make it happen." Well, you're only one person. There's 30 of them. You can't be everywhere all the time. It's not going to happen. You're always going to have a bunch of kids that are out of compliance. Now, you will have kids that are in compliance, but you'll have a bunch of kids that are out of compliance. You can't really make it happen until you give the kids a vested interest in managing each other. They then become your allies. And then you have a critical mass of people who want the thing to happen. Yet it's very gentle. So the kids say, "Hey, just pick it up, man." Okay. So he picks it up. Everybody's in their seat. Great, class. Let's look at our clock. And it looks like you guys saved 1 minute 27 seconds. Let me put that down. Okay, let's all get out our social studies book. We're on Unit 7, and off you go into the next lesson. So what does that mean? I gave them 2 minutes to get it done. They got it done in 33 seconds. And the rest of the time goes on to our preferred activity time. Now, this is a 5th grade example. Let me kind of backtrack and model for you how I would have introduced preferred activity at the beginning of the day. I might have greeted the kids, "Welcome, good morning." And then I might have said, "Now, class, before we begin, I want to point out something on our project table over by the window." And you can see I have a bunch of art supplies out on the project table. Now, we're going to have an art project for our PAT this afternoon. The last 20 minutes of the day, I always set aside for preferred activity time. And we're going to have an art project at the end of the day for preferred activity time. And I've set aside 20 minutes. But kids, you know that while I give you 20 minutes, you might end up with 30, 35, 40 minutes or more. Because all the time you save during the day, just by hustling and getting things done, coming in from outside and getting in your seats quickly, having a quick lesson transition, just following instructions so that I don't have to stand here and wait. All that time goes on to our preferred activity. So all day long, whenever we hustle, you're making your art project longer and longer and longer. So I'm giving you 20 minutes, you could end up with 35, 40 minutes. So let's see how much time we can save as we go through the day. Can you see kind of how the logic runs for the kids? There's nothing hidden. It's all right out in front of the kids. The exchange is very clear. And so they just saved 1 minute and 27 seconds, and now their art period is, 21 minutes, 27 seconds. Now, as the day goes by, I'll just keep adding and adding and adding to their preferred activity time. Now, you might say, wait a second, that's a lot of time to kind of give away for a preferred activity. No. All the time that you add is typically stolen time. Kids steal learning time from you just by dawdling. They kill 2 minutes, they just stole 2 minutes of learning time. So what you're doing is simply giving them a vested interest to take the time they typically waste and put it in a little bank and save it for later when we get to do something. All kids can understand this exchange if you make it, simple explanation. So most of your preferred activity is found time. But you might look at this 20 minutes and say, yeah, but what about that? That's a lot of time away from learning. No, it's not. We are not going to waste PAT. The whole point of PAT is eliminating waste. So what are we going to do during PAT? Learning activities. Of course, you think I'm going to kiss off 20 minutes of learning? Not in my classroom. So I will use learning time as an incentive so you save learning time and get more learning time. Now that kind of sounds cute, doesn't it? But I'm not going to throw away time. So guess what we don't use for PAT? Free time. Never use free time. For one thing, it doesn't work very well because the kids have a lot of free time after school, so it's just not that precious. There's a glut on the market. But even more important, I'm not going to throw away learning time. So we have PAT that's growing and growing as the day goes on. Let's look at the second kind of bonus. Oh, just stop. Are there any questions just about a hurry-up bonus? You kind of picture my mom doing it, getting us to bed, and you're doing a variation on it in the classroom for a lesson transition. Any questions? Okay, let's go to the second type, an automatic bonus. You use an automatic bonus when you can't time it. When can't you time the duration of the kid's behavior? I'll give you the most common example, when they're in compliance. For example, let's say you want everybody in their seat when the bell rings. Okay, what if they are in their seat when the bell rings? How much time did they save you? You don't know. It's an indeterminate quantity. If they had wasted a minute and 20 seconds, then you could say, had you not wasted 1 minute and 27, but they didn't do that. They were actually in their seats. So what's it worth? You just have to put a price on it and give it away. The most common price is a minute. A minute. So let's say at the beginning of class, I have 3 routines. I want them in their seat when the bell rings. I want them to have pencils, and I want them to have their lab manuals. Today is lab day. Now, I have them in their seats when the bell rings for a variety of reasons. I greet them at the door, just as Hal said. I have a bell work activity. I'm working the crowd during the bell work activity. I'm setting limits on any foolish behavior. I mean, there are about 5 reasons why the kids are in their seat when the bell rings. Nothing is left to chance. The bell rings, and I immediately get into congratulatory mode. Class, I appreciate you being in your seat. That's a minute. Let me see pencils. Now, the kids know that part of my routine every day is, let me see pencils. And they all do this. All right, let's back up. Let me have your first name. Epi. Epi, let's say it's 30 seconds till the class period starts. So you're in class a little early, and you realize you don't have a pencil. You lost it, you gave it away to a friend in the previous period, and you know I'm going to say, let me see your pencils, and it's going to be worth a minute. All for one, one for all. Everybody has to have a pencil. You're going to cost the class a minute if you don't have a pencil. What are you going to do? You're going to go to the toilet. That's not going to get you a pencil unless you hide pencils in the toilet. Now, I'm going to walk by. This is just for demonstration purpose. I want you to ask me, the teacher, for a pencil. Dr. Jones, do you have a pencil I could borrow? So here I go, walking by.
May I borrow your pencil?
Epi, I do not lend pencils. Now, you could probably see that coming from the I don't lend money analogy a few minutes ago. I want out of the pencil business. I know teachers that lend pencils every day and they never get them back. I want out of the pencil business. 15 seconds to go, Epi. You still don't have a pencil. What are you going to do? No, you can't because we're starting in 10 seconds now, 9 seconds. Let's say you ask the people around you, do you have a pencil? Do you have a pencil? And they'll say, I don't have an extra pencil. 5 seconds, 4. What are you going to do? Let me give you the answer. You say the following. Hey, you guys, I need a pencil. You have, in a classroom of 30 people, 29 kids who have a 1-minute vested interest in you having a pencil. If 29 kids want that to happen, it will happen. I don't know who will make it happen, and I don't care, but you'll probably get a pencil, and it might arrive like that. Now you have a pencil.
I lost it now.
Yeah, right. And frankly, I don't even care whether the person who gave it to you ever gets it back. You know, if you gave her a pencil here, don't come to me. You'll learn very quickly. Don't come to me and say, Dr. Jones, I gave Epi a pencil and she didn't give it back. Because I'm going to say, talk to Epi, don't talk to me. It's not my pencil. I want out. I want out. I want out of pencils. Now let's take lab manual. Well, that pencils is enough. Let's stop right there. So can you see how if you give 29 kids a vested interest in something happening, it will probably happen? If everybody wants some kid to pick up that paper and get in their seat quickly, it'll probably happen. If everybody wants you to have a pencil, it will probably happen. Nothing comes with a guarantee, but it will probably happen. So automatic bonuses are usually registered as whole minutes. So if we're all in our seat and we all had pencils, it'll look like this. So you can tell the difference between hurry up, because they end up in seconds, and automatics, because they're round numbers. So as the day progresses, the kids are accumulating more and more minutes for preferred activity time by being ready to begin when the bell rings with all their materials collected, by hustling when we have a lesson transition, by taking responsibility for doing what they're supposed to do, because now they have a vested interest in taking responsibility. Now, until you give them a vested interest, then all they want to do is this. Just stretch it out, take the longest vacation I can before the class period starts again. Okay, so far so good. Now, the third gift you're going to give is structure. For PAT. It is your job to provide the structure for PAT, because the kids don't know what you're talking about. And if you ask the kids, what would you like to do for PAT, which is kind of a wishy-washy thing to do, they'll come up with all kinds of, go outside, play, talk. You're not going to get useful ideas, at least not at the beginning, when you ask the kids, what do you want to do for a PAT? So what you're going to do is systematically introduce the kids to the concept of PAT. What do you mean? So, for example, on the first day of school, you may have your ice-breaking activities, your introduction of yourself, and I loved what Hal was talking about yesterday with the way that you make the classroom intimate and warm and home-like on the first day of school. In my book, there are just pages of what we call ice-breaking activities, social activities that you do on the first day of school where we learn about each other, learn each other's names. Just to build on what Hal said yesterday, before I started traveling all the time and I was working in specific schools, I kept having difficulty, particularly with the high school teachers, taking seriously the need to get to know each other, make the classroom a comfortable environment. So to try to convince my teachers that this was important, in mid-November, and the school starts beginning of September, so we're 2.5 months into school, I would have the teachers give the kids a pop quiz. And they would announce it like this: I'm going to give you a pop quiz. Now, if you get 100% on the quiz, it'll go in the grade book as a unit test. You got 100 on a unit test. But if you don't get 100, it doesn't go in the grade book. You can't lose. Everybody okay? And what I would do is have the teacher hand out a blank seating chart and say, without talking to your neighbor, give me the first and last name of everybody in the room. What do you think was the percentage of kids in a high school class in mid-November, after we've been together for 2.5 months, who could give me the first and last name of everybody in the room? What do you think the percentage was? Take a guess. About 20-25%. That means I've been in 5-6 class periods with 30, 35, 40 kids in a class period for 2.5 months, and I don't know 3/4 of their names. Now, how can you call that a family? How can you call that an intimate environment? I used to tell teachers, you know who kids do homework for? The teachers they like. Do you know what teachers they like? The teachers who like them. Now you have to ask yourself, if I've been in your class for 2.5 months, I've been in your class for 2.5 months, and I don't even know the names of the people I'm with in here. How can you call this a family? How can I conclude that you care who I am? So the question the kids are asking on the first day of school is very blunt. Am I a person or am I a piece of meat? Now, it's up to you to teach them they're a person, because otherwise they're just a piece of meat. They're just a kid sitting in that chair in 3rd period, and that's all I care about. Just do your job. So you might be introducing yourself on the first day of school, but at some point you might say, well, now class, we're going to do a lot of assignments this year. We're going to work hard, do our best work. But I also think the school should be fun. You're going to spend most of your childhood here. Now, when you're at elementary school, you have PATs just laying around, art, music, extra recess. The high school, you have to be far more planful. You have to invent PATs. I think there should be time. Let's say at the end of the day, for something that happens that you really look forward to. You can say, okay, I want to, work real hard because at the end of the day, we get to do this thing. Let's just call it a preferred activity. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what kinds of things are you talking about? And you'll say, oh, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just have a free sample. I'll give you a free one, and then you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. And so you'll give them one of your best PATs. So you can think, what do kids really love to do? There are 2 major categories. I mean, you can do a PAT with anything. 2 major categories when you're inventing. Number 1, enrichment activities. Anything that functions as an enrichment activity, you can use for a PAT. For example, take the 5th grade teacher who has the art project out on a table. Let's imagine that that fifth grade teacher would have had the art project if they never even heard about PAT. Because they value art in the classroom, it's an enrichment activity, it's part of their curriculum, so they would have had art. But what the teacher can do is get two for the price of one. She can have the enrichment, or he can have the enrichment that goes with art, and they can have the incentive for saving time. They get two for the price of one. It's actually no work. The teacher just blesses that particular activity, calls it the PAT, and empowers the children, and here's where the power comes from, empowers the children to make it longer and longer and longer by cooperating during the day. So any enrichment activity can be a PAT. But here is the easiest universal hook for getting kids motivated. Team competition. If you can make a team game out of a lesson, you've just created a recess. Now, I remember when I was in fifth grade, it was June, it was hot, and at our afternoon recess time, there was a cloud burst and we couldn't go outside. So the teacher, in desperation, divided us into two teams and we played math baseball. So have you ever played academic baseball where you have two teams and the kids are up and they field questions and, put runners on base? We played academic baseball and we loved it. Now, my fifth grade teacher didn't realize we would have worked for the opportunity to play math baseball or academic baseball because it's just fun to do with a bunch of kids. It's social, they have a bunch of laughs, you get to fool around a little bit. We never did it again. She was just using it, as a stopgap. Kids love games, so I decided to study games, game theory. And I learned there are only about a half a dozen games in the world. Do you realize that the rules for baseball, football, basketball, soccer, Jeopardy, and Hangman are all the same? So you can have a couple of sets of rules and play learning games for PAT and just use questions from the day as your single, double, triple, and home run questions for a baseball game. But here's what I learned about watching kids. They love to play, and they hate sitting on the sidelines. Does that make sense for kids? Okay, let's look at baseball. You're one team, you're the other team. You're up. So I'm going to give you a question. I'll ask you, you want a single, double, triple, or home run question? She's up. What's everybody else doing? Not much. Kids are so easy, they still love it. They love spelling bees. But in spelling bees, you have the same problem. You have the word. Nobody else has anything to do. There's a lot of wasted time, but the kids still love it. What I'm thinking about is, how can I get kids to play more? Here's what I invented, although I didn't invent it really. Defense. You're up. So you say, I'll take a triple. So I give you one of my hard questions, and you can't answer it. Are you out? Not yet. I come over here and say, fly ball. And then I wait. Because if I say fly ball and immediately call on you, everybody else in the team says, well, thank goodness I didn't have to think. If I say fly ball and just wait, then people start thinking, oh, I better find the answer. Do you play a game like this open book or closed book? Open book, because as soon as you have the question, you guys know what the fly ball is going to be. So what you end up doing is creating incentive for all you kids looking up the answer in your lab manual, in your notes, or what have you, as soon as she gets the question. Now, if she answers the question, she's on base. But if she doesn't answer the question, I say, fly ball, and I wait as kids are rustling paper, looking it up the answer. And then after, 8, 9, 10 seconds, I call on somebody. Now, if you can read the answer out of your notes or out of your lab manual, you catch the fly ball and put her out. But if you miss the question, you drop the fly ball, and she's on base with an error. Everybody advances a base on an error. And the game rules are called ping pong. because the play goes from here to here to here to here. So what I've eliminated is innings, so you don't have to sit for 3 outs before you have anything to do. You get the first question. Next question comes to this team. Single, double, triple, or home run. What'll it be? You take a double. Give you the question. You answer it. You stand up here on base. I actually put, a little piece of paper on the floor, and you actually stand on second base. Okay, back over here. Single, double, triple, or home run. What will it be? And you take a double. And you answer the question. All right, she's on base with a double. So you come up here and stand on second base. So we have 2 runners on second base. So we're running 2 games parallel. So the games are called double diamond baseball because there are 2 diamonds, 1 for each team. Then the next question comes over here. Single, double, triple, or home run, what will it be? And you say, home run. Real tough question. So I give you one of my tough questions. Let's say you can't answer it. Fly ball. The question is, blah, 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 blah. Wait. Kids are looking up the answer. Wait. The paper stops rustling. I call on you. Now, if you can give me the answer, you catch the fly ball, put her out. Now, here's how you keep score. For each team, runs minus outs. And for the other team, runs minus outs. So what that means is when you catch a fly ball, it nullifies one of their runs. It's the equivalent of a solo home run. And so defense gets to be very important. In fact, it's not infrequent games end up with negative scores because they put more people out than you move around the bases, which is just fine. Now, you can use anything for questions, things you taught today. And that's why a lot of teachers at high school will just zero out the account at every class period. They'll say, I'm going to put 10 minutes aside for PAT at the end of the period. But all the time we save gets added to that. So we could have 13, 14 minutes if you hustle. And then during the end of the period, we play, chemistry baseball, chemistry basketball, and all the questions come from what I taught you today. And you can be looking it up in your notes. I could leave some notes up here. And then we're all zeroed out at the end of the class period. So let me conclude by giving you the most basic rule of motivation. It's the answer to the question, why should I? The rule is simply this: no joy, no work. It's that simple. If you want kids to cooperate, you have to give them a reason. It must be something they want, something they're willing to work for. Having fun in the classroom is not fluff. It is not time away from learning. It is how you motivate kids to try hard, save time, and quit dawdling half their life away. No joy, no work. So you end up studying as I did. And in my book, I have a bunch of examples, but online I have a whole kind of manual of preferred activity games. So just go to Fred Jones or Frederick A. Jones and Associates, online. It's in the back of your book, and you'll have more PATs than you'll need for the rest of your career. So it's all right there. They're games that are good for a wide range of ages, a wide range of subject areas, clear through high school, clear down to first grade. So the PATs are there. You don't have to invent them. They're online. There's some in your book, though. And when you go back to class, think to yourself, I'm not powerless when it comes to getting kids to cooperate and to hustle and to save learning time. I don't have to nag them anymore because that doesn't work anyway. What I can do is have joy with learning and for free create an incentive for hustle, for being where you're supposed to be at the right time, ready to begin. So once again today we've done a lot of nuts and bolts. And one of the things that I've enjoyed about Hal's presentation is the specificity of it, the nuts and bolts. What do you do? What do you say? So thank you very much for your attention. We have some more specifics. We're done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. husband of Mrs. Jones. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we have been requested to bid some time.
Oh, your job is to kill time, is that it?
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I think we just have to hyperesthetically exercise macrography appendicitis, which will eventually tenant whenever we intend to propel ourselves into the troposphere. And that's a very good way of killing time. Okay. The memory of Mr.
Was that Philippine language?
No, it's called English.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
just like Ken Lee.
Oh, okay.
Ken Lee. You know, the Thai singer.
Yeah.
All right. I will go around. No.
Oh,
Mr.
you want me to
Jones, you're
stay? Okay.
Yes. We'll have questions. No, how would you? There is no time. There is time to waste, but no time for open forum.
Oh, I don't care.
So they can either write the questions down on pieces of paper, or they can write down the questions in their minds and answer them themselves. And or they can pose 5 questions now, and you choose one.
Okay.
What you think is not the worst, not the best, but what you feel like answering.
Yeah.
Okay. One question, Mr. Urban. No. Yeah, question about what he said. Because later on we'll just say, goodbye, Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
There, and make it the title of a movie. But now, in the meantime, we'd like to pose 5 questions. Anybody? Sister? Something that came to your mind? Make it fast, please. Oh, sorry. Okay, but any questions? Here. All right, one question, no explanation, one question.
I just want to know about, say, maths, or I'm teaching statistics. I'd like to know how PAT will be done in a fast way, so that, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, that might take a long time to solve some problems.
Okay, that's one question. Next question. No, he will choose one to answer. Okay. Shucks. It's a good thing 45 pounds came out of me already. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I understand it has to be structured, but should the PAT always be related to the subject matter, or it can be anything also?
Okay, second question. Did you got that?
I can answer quickly. Typically, the questions have to do with subject matter, something you recently taught, but it can be anything. It could be general citizenship, it could be general information. I've known teachers who just used Trivial Pursuit all year long and just asked anything they wanted.
Okay. Question. As long as we have just one short question, simple sentence, one subject, one predicate. Questions. Could you? So no question. He will
He's
just
just
get
trying
out.
to go to the bathroom.
All right, ma'am.
Yeah, how about children with behavioral conditions like ADHD? They process instructions differently.
Okay, how about people like us who do? They process things differently.
Can you repeat or paraphrase the question? What?
What do we do with children who have behavioral conditions such as ADHD, BDAS, MNDC, and all the other things that have been acronymed?
MSNBC? I can give you a quick answer.
Quick answer.
Quick answer. The chapter in my book that follows responsibility training is the answer to that question. So it's an add-on to responsibility training. Once you have responsibility training, then you can use the group to help the child who's deviant. And it's explained as to how. It's a kind of a win-win way of dealing with kids with severe emotional behavioral problems. And
But in order to read the book, you have to get it.
Yeah, you have to buy the book. Yeah.
Right? Question.
Should the PAT activities be every meeting?
Well, repeat that again.
Should PAT activities be held every meeting, every class meeting?
Oh, do PATs have to be held every class meeting? Not at all. that's one way of doing it in high school. Perhaps a more common way is just once a week.
Once a week.
But if the kids are rather immature and a week is too long, you might want to do it Wednesday and Friday. Yeah, you just have to kind of tailor the time to their maturity. And you can tell, for example, with a third grade class, if the time is too long, they'll do real well up until about a half an hour before PAT, and then they'll start falling apart. You know, they'll start losing time. And then you say, okay, it's just a little too long for them to wait. So you adjust.
Okay, I think Mrs. Jones has a question.
No, I have an answer. One of the things I want you all to know about is that on fredjones.com, we have a free download of 92 pages of how-to. So you don't always need to buy a book. You can go there. It gives you all the exercises. And the PAT games are also free. So we want you to be able to use this.
Okay, that is now, so that's, but how do you, the how-to of downloading? That's a different story.
I have that answer too. You find any 11-year-old you know and ask them to do it for you.
All right, so a 93-year-old can ask an 11-year-old.
There you go. There you go. That'll do it.
Okay, and then, Ma'am, Lynn, could you tell us about birds? She is a bird watcher. She was watching birds 2 days ago. This has nothing to do with the conference, but it is worthwhile talking
Now,
about.
I'm going to excuse myself because Hal needs my microphone, so I'm going to go have it put on.
Hal
his
needs
phone.
the microphone.
Oh.
Okay. Here is Hal.
You want this, don't you?
Well, first of all, the Philippines has wonderful birds, and I want to thank the Brown family for having me to Epic Center, where I was able to view some absolutely stunning birds in a wonderful environment, and they have many conferences there, and yesterday they were having one on character education, so it's a wonderful place to go.
Step to the front of the class. Give me 5
Yes,
minutes.
sir.
I'm going to tell you very quickly
Yes, sir.
about our presentation. We're a Canadian company.
Just ask my wife. She has all the answers.
Okay, everyone
Yes,
else, wonderful.
no, but stay on because you have memorized the answers of the wife, so you're the one
I don't know.
after.
I can't-
49 years, and they said
we
it wouldn't last,
manufacture these candy machines
but it has lasted. So,
in our factory in
Question.
Korea. And
Question.
This is our first time to the Philippines to show you
Question.
something that you haven't seen before. These are designed only
Camera.
for the M&M's product. Everybody loves M&M's.
question.
Okay.
Question.
When you go over to the 7-Eleven,
Sir, yes, ma'am.
M&M's, they're about 45
Good morning, sir.
pesos
Simple
for a
with
bag.
subject and
You
predicate.
get about 40 pieces in the
Okay,
bag.
sir.
With our
May I know
machines, you
what
put
would
10
be the
pieces
best
inside the machine, you
intervention
get
in
10
dealing
pieces.
diverse
It's good value
students?
for the money.
And
It's
what
the
do
same.
you think would be
You
the
get
best
bag that's on the
strategies to
bottom,
deal
put the
with these
bag underneath,
diverse
you
students?
walk away. This is
That was a
making
compound
opportunities.
sentence.
So what I'm going to do is just take 5 minutes and tell you
What
how
is the
it
best
works.
way to deal with
People
students who
put
are diverse?
vending machines because they want to get product out of the machine. So I love M&M's.
Well, I have good news for you. In spite of diversity, all children love to play. And so what I'm, in a sense, doing is harnessing kind of a universal characteristic of childhood. They love to play and give them a way of using that tendency to generate cooperative behavior. So diversity hasn't really been much of an issue. The bigger issue was the question the lady asked back there. The one child, the squeaky wheel, who will not cooperate on purpose just to kind of be in control of the class, the negative leader. What do you do about them? And the chapter that I referred to is the fail-safe mechanism for that. It's called omission training, and it deals with it. But in terms of just general cultural diversity, all kids like to play.
Final question for Lynn. In case there are questions, how would they pose it to your husband so that he does not kill quality time with you?
He has figured that out. Info at Fred Jones is me, and when you ask a question, I'm the one who answers it.
Very good. Could you just say how men can find spouses who can do this for them? So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. and Mrs. Jones.